When Hazel McCallion was born, many Canadian women were still fighting for the right to vote. She, of course, went on to become one of the longest-serving mayors anywhere in the world, serving a total of 12 terms. And I want to get a better sense of the Mississauga that you took over in 1978 when you won your first election. What was it like?
Well, Mississauga had some large developers in the that had bought thousands of acres of land, etc. And when I joined the Mississauga City Council in 1974, having been mayor of Streetsville for 3 years, I brought in a city that was debt-free, or a community that was debt-free, and also brought in a capital levy for expansion of a city, of a community. And I served on the council for 2 terms, and I wasn't happy with what was going on. I felt that we were not making the progress that we should. We were not dealing with the development in a way that was, in my opinion, developing for people and for businesses. So I decided to either go up or go out, because I don't think you can sit on a council and be negative all the time. I think your whole life becomes negative. You know,
So you won that first election in '78 when you ran for mayor for the first time.
Yeah.
What was the biggest difference between running that Mississauga in 1978 versus the Mississauga of today?
Oh, the challenges are huge today. First of all, municipalities clearly don't have the authority to deal with the issues that we're facing today. And we certainly don't have the sustainable revenue. You know, we can't operate anymore on the property tax. We can't operate anymore on handouts. We don't know when they're coming. How can you do financial planning if you don't know when you're going to get a contribution from the federal or provincial government? There's all kinds of sources of revenue. And we have one, property tax and user fees.
So the cities today, in your view, need to have more authority, revenue tools,
and revenue tools.
Taxes.
To
do their jobs.
Definitely. Either sharing, as we do with the gas tax, or raising revenue of our own, giving us the authority. They did give it to Toronto, and Toronto played around with it. Unfortunately, they put in a registration fee, took it away.
For vehicles, the vehicle registration tax.
Then they put in a transfer tax, and that's been argued as to whether they're going to continue or et cetera. So unfortunately, I don't think Toronto dealt with it properly as such. They either didn't do their homework when they decided to go with the additional taxes and sell it to the people. It's hard to sell a tax increase, but you can do it if you do your homework and present the true facts to the people.
That is a theme that runs throughout your book here, Hurricane Hazel, A Life with Purpose, this business of doing your homework. Yeah. And let me follow up on that by asking about this. You've heard this knock on your Mississauga numerous times, that it is a sprawling bedroom community that has not been well planned, and now you're trying to play catch up on public transit, you're trying to play catch up on intensification, you're trying to play catch up on building a beautiful waterfront. Is that a fair knock in your view?
No, I don't think it is, and I'll tell you why. I don't know of any community that hasn't started with urban sprawl. I believe Toronto started that with Rosedale, Forest Hill Village, Don Mills, because it's what the people wanted at a certain time in history. And people came to Toronto, immigrants especially, settled in Toronto, rented possibly, worked hard, saved their money, and now they want to buy a home of their own, which is the objective, I think, of most families, to have a house, a single-family home. And so they moved to Mississauga, they moved to Vaughan, they moved to Markham, Oshawa, etc. So if the developers at the time had built high-rises, they would have remained vacant, because people did not want to live in high-rises. So it's the timing of the desire of the residents, really, that determines what type of development that you can project into a community.
So the public is more interested in more intensive development today in a way they weren't back then.
Condominiums are becoming very popular. People are leaving their single-family home. So Therefore, Mississauga developed the same way that most communities have developed, except that usually a city develops from a core and expands. We have to build a core in Mississauga, the city core. It's been quite a challenge because the core started in a hayfield. So we've had a challenge in development. But the developers can't build something that people don't want, and therefore single-family homes was the way that Mississauga developed. Now we're second in density next to Toronto, because now people are prepared to live in apartment buildings, and certainly condominiums are extremely popular.
One of the things I've always wanted to ask you was that iconic nickname of yours, Hurricane Hazel. I don't know why anybody wants to be named after a storm that blew through Toronto, whatever it was, 70 years ago and killed, you know, was it 80 people or
80
something?
people.
80 people.
Yeah.
How did you get that nickname in the first place?
I don't know. It just, I guess because people felt that when they approached me, I got things done. You know, it's
But hurricanes blow things up. Hurricanes blow things up.
I know.
Why would you want to be known as Hurricane Hazel?
Well, I guess to some degree, I got activity going in Mississauga, got the citizens involved, and worked with the developers to build the city. Certainly, at times, opposed them strongly with what they wanted to do, etc., but worked with them because a city has to expand.
One of, I think, the most iconic moments of your career was, of course, shortly after you took over, and you ended up on Walter Cronkite's newscast. He didn't quite say the name of the city right, but Mississauga was on the news all over the world because there was a massive train derailment, and you evacuated hundreds of thousands of people, and nobody died,
No.
despite a fireball that shook windows miles away. Why did nobody die, do you think?
Well, we did have an emergency plan. It certainly has been improved since then, but it was a team approach. The fire department, we had a very able fire chief. We had a police department that was well organized and a fire chief. The OPP came out to help us, and Roy McMurtry came from the province to help us. And we put together a team that looked at the situation and made decisions. I remember that when we decided to evacuate the Mississauga Hospital, that was the toughest decision I felt we had to make, or I had to be involved in, because I could see people coming out of the operating room and having to be evacuated, which we did. We had some 50 ambulance lined up in front of that hospital to take the people to other hospitals. So it was a real team effort. Staff of the city, other than the fire department. So we all just joined forces and said we got a disaster. The people, when they were asked to leave, obviously they're good Mississauga residents. When we said they had to leave, they left.
Which is really different from a lot of places. You look at New Orleans and Katrina, when that happened, people wouldn't leave.
Wouldn't leave. So we were, I mean, in my opinion, the citizens cooperated. You can get a lot done when the citizens cooperate with you.
I take no joy in raising this next part, but you talk about it in the book, and as we talk about the highs and lows of public life, the leadership you demonstrated during the train derailment was certainly a high. The low certainly had to be the conflict of interest charges that were leveled at you in 2009 regarding a real estate deal downtown Mississauga that your son may or may not have had an interest in.
No, did have an interest.
Did have an interest in, okay.
No question about it.
You were, ultimately, they investigated it, you were cleared of the charges. However, they did say you were willfully blind to the status of your son's involvement with the deal. If you had it to do again, what would you have done differently?
Well, it was you know, the city of Mississauga is the 6th largest city in Canada. Can you imagine? We don't have a convention center. Windsor has one. London has one. A lot of smaller municipalities have one. And a city needs a convention center to bring people from all over the world and all over Canada to come to meet in your city. We can't do that. We don't have that capacity. We tried to get a convention center. We went out on proposal calls, no response. Then my son found a friend that was prepared to invest in purchasing the land to build one. next to the Living Arts Center so we could combine the Living Arts Center facilities with the convention center and build. And it certainly was necessary to have a 4- or 5-star hotel. You can't do it on a small hotel. So he was the only one that was able to get somebody to prepare to invest the money. Well, they ran into difficulty in trying to get owners to sell the land to them. I got involved because the only way to get a convention center is for someone to own the land to build it. So I got involved and convinced owners to sell the land to WCD, but I asked for a condition that killed the deal. I asked for a condition that the hotel had to be built first. Because of my experience with developers, they'll come with a huge plan with residential and commercial. What do they build first? They build the residential, and then the commercial comes when they see fit to do it. So I asked them to lay that condition down that the hotel had to be built first. They couldn't get a 4- or 5-star hotel because the economy dropped at that point.
But that, in essence, saved you in the end, because your clause, in effect, torpedoed the deal. So obviously,
yeah, that's right.
People couldn't very well accuse you of doing something to line your pockets or your sons, because you put the clause in that killed the deal.
Killed the deal.
Yeah.
So if I was only interested in in my son making money, I would not have asked for that deal, because they had land to build a lot of condominiums.
But the critics,
and those could be built.
I hear you, but the critics thought you were sloppy on this, right? That you made mistakes along the way, didn't declare a conflict of interest at council when you should have.
No, I did. The judge did not charge me with conflict of interest. I declared it every time it went before a committee, or I followed the Conflict of Interest Act. He said I shouldn't have got involved in the deal in the first place. That is not the Conflict of Interest Act, Steve. It's very clear that you declare it when it comes before either committee of council or to council, or you influence the staff. The staff appeared at the hearing and said, I in no way discussed it with them. So he couldn't charge me with conflict of interest. Then the next conflict was engineered by an enemy of mine who got a Palestinian to charge me with conflict that was unemployed, et cetera, as I understand. And I won that case again. So I don't know. I followed the conflict of interest. But the judge said that I shouldn't have gotten involved in it because my son was involved.
And in hindsight, he was right.
Well, no, he wasn't right, because I got involved and laid down a condition that killed the deal.
Okay. Let's move on. I want to, I suspect people, because you've been the oldest mayor in Canada for a long time, are expecting a lot of questions about age. And I actually don't want to ask you about age. I actually want to ask you about being female and in politics, because when you first won, you were one of course, very few high-ranking women in municipal politics in the country.
Right.
So here's something you have in the book. This is a quote from back in the day. When I ran as Deputy Reeve of Streetsville in 1967, the women worked against me. They couldn't understand how a woman would want to get into a man's world, because the mayor and all the members of council were men. When I ran in '78 as mayor of Mississauga, I believe women played a large role in getting me elected. And I wonder, formerly your worship, what changed?
I don't know. There's, I guess, my performance as mayor of Streetsville, because I became mayor of Streetsville for 3 years, that I sort of convinced women in the area that a woman could do the job because of my performance as Reeve, as Deputy Reeve. Then I became Reeve of Streetsville when the Reeve resigned, and then I was elected mayor for 3 years.
That was a comment you gave the Toronto Star. And now here's something, a quote directly from the book related to that 1978 campaign for mayor, which, I mean, boy, this was a moment here. Here's your first mayoralty debate. After a debate in the 1978 campaign, Mayor Ron Searle, your predecessor, told a reporter that having a challenger who was a woman required him to pull his political punches. My instinct is to hammer the hell out of her, he said, but I can't really do it. I'm really inhibited by the fact that she's a woman. When you heard him say that, or when you saw the quote, do you remember how you reacted at the time?
No, I don't remember, but certainly the women reacted.
They didn't like it?
They didn't like it.
What was the impact of his having said that?
Oh, I think it had an impact on the election. There's no question
It
about it.
turned it for you?
Pardon?
It turned the election for you?
Well, I'm not sure it turned the election, but it certainly, I think the people of Mississauga were concerned at that time as to what was going on in Mississauga. I had proven that I was able to handle finances, etc. So but it certainly helped. There's no question about it.
You have said that the country would be better off if more women were involved in federal and provincial politics, but you don't believe in pink quotas or tokenism, as you've called it. So what's the best way to get more women active into politics?
Well, I think we have to encourage them, and women have to encourage them to run for office, rather than, you'll notice that most of the campaigns for male candidates, usually the campaign is run by women. And I've often made the statement that women should stop stuffing envelopes and licking stamps when we use stamps to get male candidates elected. They should offer themselves. But women have to support women. I believe that the success of Bonnie Crombie is because she was a woman. I think a lot of women have seen what I've been able to accomplish as mayor of Mississauga. And so I thought, well, I guess they said, well, we'll vote for another woman.
Just finally, I want to ask you, as a woman who is, I think, 4 months shy of her 94th birthday, how are you?
Excellent health. No medication, except the odd aspirin.
You're still taking the odd aspirin?
Oh, yeah, well, I'm coming down with a cold right now, and I've been having a few aspirins.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
I know you get asked this all the time, but people want to know, how have you managed to work so long and so hard in a job where burnout is very typical, and yet here you are at 93 and a half, 93 and 3/4, still going pretty strong,
yeah.
Mrs. McCallion?
Well, I've had good health all my life, and I work hard. I think my mother taught me that hard work never killed anyone, and I think if you stay active mentally and physically, and I enjoyed the job. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm going to miss it. I'm going to miss the job.
How will you stay active mentally and physically now that you don't have this job?
Well, I'm going to help the Ontario Women's Hockey Association to promote girls' hockey internationally, try to keep girls' hockey in the Olympics, to make sure other countries join us in that competition. And I'm going to continue to pursue more authority for municipalities across the country, as well as more sustainable funding so they can discharge their responsibilities. Because all the action is at the local level. That's where we have to deal with the issues, deal with poverty, deal with jobs, deal with health, deal with everything. It's the local level. You
were a pretty good hockey player back in the day. Do you play anymore?
No, but I skated January the 1st, 2014, in front of the Civic Center.
You did. Are you going to get back on skates again, do you think?
Yes, if all goes well, I'll be back on January the 1st again, skating at the Civic Center.
I hope to see that. Hazel McCallion, the name of your book is called Hurricane Hazel, A Life with Purpose. It's really good of you to come into TVO tonight and talk to us about this.
Thank you, Steve.
All the best with what comes next.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.